so we are, we are suggesting the organization as to what kind of performance measurement approach that they need to take, and also certain monitoring mechanisms from where they would benefit, both as individual employees and as a organization on the whole.
Yeah, that sounds fair. And as a consulting, as you being in consulting industry, you would also realize that not only working for the organization matters, but also selling the organization that you are working for to the clients. So which brings me to my next question, which is, how did you approach the client and how did you bag the client in the first place?
All right. So we were focusing only on those organizations just small and want to grow big. So we were tracking some recent news articles for these small organizations, and we came up with about 15 to 20 organizations that we had to tap in. So this was one of those, and when we approached, it was a random cold mail that we had written to them, saying that we are an organization, newly set up, we are a bunch of new students with so-and-so background and so on. What worked for us was having the three founders of this organization. We had varied background. One was finance and audit based. The second was a legal guy, and I'm a human resource person. So it augured well for us to sell the diverse background that we have and can solve various things within the organization for them. So that was a USP for us, and we also had a framework in mind, because without which selling our organization to them would be very difficult, right? So we had a business framework. We called it the Solve Sense Wheel as a framework. So we devised which is a diagnostic tool from where you would find out where the problem lies and so on. So we gave a brief white paper on that. And so these two things actually clicked in terms of converting it into a first time call. And they were very straightforward in terms of saying, we liked your framework and we want you to find out a solution for this particular problem.
Sounds good.
There were two other organizations which came through from a similar process, but there's one more which is coming up through a word of mouth. So we are happy that it's progressing well that way.
That's good. So you seem to be making inroads with the selling process as well, which is a very good experience to be in, to be having in consulting, right?
Probably not in terms of revenue yet. So the time that we spend versus the output and the revenue is quite minimal at this stage. But it's early stages, right? So we would still want to evaluate it further.
I see. So was this done as a pro bono consulting project to the client? And was this required for your graduation, or
No. It was pro bono.
Got it. Okay. And while you're talking about your previous experience, right? So you were talking about how you created your own framework, which is good. So that brings me to my next question, which is, even in change management, there are quite a few frameworks that you might be already aware about, right? So tell me about a time when you had to use sort of a framework to approach an organizational change development project.
Okay. So I would see, I see change in three phases, right? So first is identifying the team and the change that is required for the organization. Second is doing the change, and then finally measuring and reinforcing the change, right? I, as an individual, have been part of the last two phases, more so because of the kind of role that I performed for the organization was such that I wasn't part of the phase one of change management, or rather, I didn't have decision-making powers for the first stage of change management. So the later two phases, I've been very active part of. So if you would look at phase two, which is which I would say is the most difficult thing to do, which involves your communication, having a communication plan and platform to tell the employees and the stakeholders what is happening. Second is training them for the change and probably even hand-holding them during that particular process.